Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to pull up a really quick slideshow for everybody to help welcome us to the event. Okay. So again, thank you for joining AMA Detroit today for From Marketer to Agency Owner. My name is Christina Strong Regan. I am on the board of AMA Detroit. I just want to say a little bit about AMA Detroit before we dive into the webinar. AMA Detroit is the local professional chapter of the American Marketing Association, connecting marketers and the broader business community across Metro Detroit. The chapter provides professional development, networking, and knowledge sharing opportunities designed to help marketing professionals grow their skills, careers, and connections. And you can learn more about us at amadetroit.org. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers for today, who are going to tell you all about their experience with running their own agencies. First up, we have Stephen Brent May. He is the co-founder of One Foot Over, an award-winning agency for industrial and manufacturing companies trust. No fluff, no jargon, just marketing that moves the needle for technical brands. And then we have Ashlan Glazier-Anderson. She is the founder and CEO of AshbeanPDX Marketing, a full-service marketing agency that supports small businesses and nonprofits. She's a professional certified marketer, certified digital marketing professional, podcast host, and international best-selling author. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And then I'm going to let Stephen and Ashlan tell you a little bit more about how many years they've been doing this, any more background information that is pertinent to today's conversation. So Stephen, if you want to start, then we'll pop it over to Ashlan.
Sure. So I've been in marketing for 23 years. That seems crazy. But I've owned the agency with a business partner for going on 10 years. Next April will make 10 years in business. So you know, we've made it last almost to double digits.
And I've been doing marketing for almost 20, so 2027, May 2027 will be 20 years, which is wild to think about as well. I have been in business for almost 6 years, so January of 2027 will be 6 years in business. And I actually discovered marketing in high school as an elective, fell in love with it. It was between marketing and psychology. I could have gone either direction. And then I looked at what a psychology degree gets you into, and I was like, that does not sound interesting at all. So I stuck with marketing and business and have not looked back since.
Awesome. And just as a side note, everyone, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout today's webinar. We will be checking those periodically and answering those questions. Ashley, you already kind of touched base a little bit on your marketing origin story. So Stephen, now it's your turn. Tell us how you got into marketing.
Yeah, so I went to college, got a degree in marketing and advertising. I initially started out on a path for pre-law. I really wanted to be an attorney, and so I still love reviewing contracts and things like that. But ended up in a marketing career and kind of started out in entertainment and hospitality and did stuff for bars, restaurants, clubs, which turned into eventually hotels. Um, and then kind of during the recession, got moved from marketing to sales to keep a job, which, as a 20 something, it really felt more important to have a job during a recession than to have my dream job. So, um, kind of got involved with AMA when I moved to Houston because I needed a network and wanted to get back into marketing, and really landed my dream job at that point and eventually became a global CMO for a software company. And then that parlayed into agency ownership, which we'll kind of talk about how that shift happened once we get into the questions.
Awesome. Thank you. My marketing origin story was simple. I had 11 internships, and then I decided that I love doing all the things. And so I moved into marketing because as a journalist, you got to do all the things, right? So that kind of made it easy for me to choose where I was going to go. But let's dive right in. What motivated you to move from working as a marketer to building your own agency? There's a
Ashland,
catalyst, a space where you're
Yeah.
like, I need to do this now.
Do you want me to go first, Stephen?
yeah, I'll
Uh,
take that.
Um, so I ended up doing this by accident. I was working at a national nonprofit, and it was like the third or fourth person who asked me, like, "Do you know somebody who does this in marketing?" It happened to be a colleague of mine that worked at the same place as me, and she wanted to help her mother sell her abstract art online. So I formed an LLC. I made a 2-hour presentation on like all the different ways you could sell art through your Instagram online and your websites and all of that. And then, got that money, ended that contract. And then 2 weeks later, this person who I was helping out, she's an abstract artist by night and a psychotherapist by day. Her psychotherapy website went down. So they came back to me and they were like, "Oh my God, our website went down. GoDaddy just like removed it from the internet. Can you help us set up a new website?" And I was like, "Sure, I know how to do that too." And so helped them with that. And it wasn't until, so like that was in January, it wasn't until March that I actually landed my first kind of big long-term client off of a market research call. Was asking her all these questions. I was like, "Hey, I want to work with businesses like you, curious about all these things." And at the end of that call, she said, "Do you want to do this for us?" And so I said yes, and I figured it out from there. And so yeah, it was fully by accident. I was still working full time at my day job and moonlighting as an agency by night as well.
Yeah. So for me, it was I don't want to say it was accidental, but it was not on my, it wasn't on my life plan to be a business owner or to be an agency owner. Um, it was just one of those things where everything aligned and it felt like the right move at the time. And so I was, leading the global marketing team at a software company, and it was a company who the job was great and the team was great. I had a great team that I worked with. But the company didn't necessarily value marketing. And so it kind of gotten to a point career-wise where it felt like we took it as far as they were going to allow it to go. And so I was doing some freelance work with another agency in Houston just to kind of fill my cup and get some, be able to do some things that felt more purposeful for me. So during the time, and this is kind of the AMA connection, my now business partner, we co-chaired an event together at the Houston chapter and worked really well together. She had an agency and she was really wanting to grow it and said, I need to either start hiring or take on a partner. And, we worked so well together as volunteers. We were like, what if we do this thing together? And I was doing it freelance and I was like, what if I put effort into it? We could bring in real clients. And so, it was kind of just everything aligned, and we made a plan and formed our business in April of 2017, and then I left my full-time job in October. And we'd spent that time between April and October kind of putting the pieces in place, the foundations of the business, and then I went full-time as a business owner in October of 2017.
I just want to piggyback a little bit off of what you said about leaving your job. At what point did you know it was the right time to leave your full-time job? What was your criteria for that?
I mean, part of it was, you know, we knew going into it, and I knew that like if we were going to really make a go at this as an agency and having a legitimate business, like it couldn't be a part-time thing. It couldn't be like, this is what I do in my free time while I work a 9 to 5. And that wouldn't have been fair to Hami to do that. And it wouldn't have been fair to the business because we couldn't have grown it. And so it really was just a decision that I said, you know what, if we're going to do it, we've got to commit to it. And I've got to give it 100%. And, I was fortunate that I had, savings and stuff that like, it was like, while we build the revenue, because we certainly didn't take, a strong salary for the first little bit, but it was one of those things where it was like, I've got to commit to doing it. Otherwise, I'm not really running a business. I'm still freelancing. And so it really just was a leap of faith. And, it took 6 months of groundwork really to say, okay, now's the right time. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it was a very scary decision to make, to leave stability for that.
Ashlan, what about you?
Yeah, I when you start a business, you put your own money into it to run it. So I started in January. By September, I basically paid myself back everything that I had put into it, but I was not taking a salary yet at that time. But I had enough work that I had hired, a person to help me out during that time. And then it was by March of the following year, so 15 months in, that my business was making basically the equivalent to my salary. But as you know, whatever your top line revenue is, you don't get to take that home as money. So I actually went to all my clients and I said, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my full-time job. Like, do you have more work for me? Do you have a referral for me? And that first client that I had gotten off the market research call, she was like, hey, I know a nonprofit that needs support in marketing. Like, let me connect you with them. So they became, my next client as well. And so I told my job, peace out. I'm out because I'm going to go do this full time. And they actually panicked and they were like, oh my gosh, like, we don't know we're going to replace you. I also, in the middle of this, I got a new job in July. So I was only at this place for like 7 months before I was like, hey, bye. I built this enough to like do this. So I worked for them super part-time, like really good, like financial terms because they covered my health insurance like through the end of my contract. Then I actually did something crazy, which is I went to Hawaii for like 17 days to go visit family. So I worked super part-time in my business, but didn't work my full-time job anymore. During that time, they hired somebody. And then when I came back from vacation, I trained that person for 2 weeks. And then I was on my own by June. And then, yeah, that it was really real. But because I didn't have to worry about the full-time job anymore, and I could really like, I always felt really guilty like promoting my business because if I promoted it really aggressively, it would show my job like, hey, maybe she's not serious about staying here. So I was able to land a couple more big clients by July and really make it to the point that it felt comfortable to be in business and actually taking like an equivalent to my salary from previously.
Well, that's good. It's like you both had adventurous roads to the agency owner, but you got there. So with that, can you tell us how you identified the niche audience or market opportunity your agency would serve?
So it's we were joking before the call started that 10 years feels like a long time, so I don't remember the specifics, but I know that when we went into it, one of the things we were very clear on was like we wanted to serve B2B clients. So, we didn't want to do B2C marketing, and it was really just a preference. And, kind of in our market too, there's a stronger need and a stronger stronger B2B base here. So we knew that going into it, that was, where we wanted to be, just because we were both passionate about that. I would say that we probably didn't really have a specific niche until a few years ago. And, it was through some owner peer groups and other, connections and stuff that the thought of niching down became more attractive. And so I would say the first several years, like we experimented and we said, let's take B2B clients in a lot of different industries. And so it was probably about 2.5 years ago where we really spent some time saying like, who have been our best clients? What's the work we enjoy the most? What's scalable? What's repeatable? What's easy to train the team on? And so it was probably, a lot further into the journey where we really said, it's industrial manufacturing and enterprise technology is really where we feel like we make the most impact and we enjoy the work the most. So I'd say, it was really a journey to get there, but the sooner you can get there, the easier it is from a positioning and sales perspective. So, a lesson learned is maybe don't wait as long as we did.
Ashlan, what about you?
Yeah, so nonprofits was really easy for me on that side of things because of my history of volunteering and just interest in learning how they run and manage themselves. So on the nonprofit side, I actually do more than just marketing and communications. I provide grant writing services. program evaluation and like running programs. AMA really helped with that, being a past president, knowing how to run, events, programs, all those different things. And then on the small business side of things, I would say that I don't necessarily have a niche. I know the folks that I work best with, and I actually look more at like a psychographic profile, like the folks who want to do the work, the folks who want to show up on camera, the people who want to have like conversations. I will say, like, the folks who are not delusional about who their actual target audience is or whether or not they have a sellable product or service. And so, yeah, so I look for more of those qualifications. And honestly, the folks who want to dig in and understand marketing a little bit, I've realized that I don't work well with folks who kind of just like want to hand off their business and be like, make it work for me. And I'm like, oh, but this is yours. This is not mine. And so I feel like I've gotten better at identifying the red and yellow flags ahead of time instead of going all in to try to help somebody in kind of a desperation save my business mode.
And just to get a little more context for the participants too, can you tell us a little more about the structure of your current agency, like the level of like employees that you have and like how you kind of structured your business? Ashley, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So it is me and contractors right now. I did a small stint of having employees, which was hard. When we hit, or when Trump decided to stop giving federal dollars for a lot of nonprofits, that actually got rid of a bunch of our client work and that side of things. So I actually did have to let go the couple of employees that I had just to kind of rethink and reallocate. And so for me, I've gone back and forth about it, and talked to lots of HR professionals about it. They're like, you should have employees. And it's like, I'm going to keep having 1099s until I feel very comfortable in that space again. But yeah, so right now it's me, and I have four people that bring different kind of experience and expertise to different pieces of client work. One of them actually I met through Stephen.
Yeah.
Making connections.
Yeah.
And our agency, we have a mix of W-2 employees and 1099 contractors. So our team of full-time employees is 7, and then we have probably like 6 to 8 what we consider like our stable of like day-to-day contractors that we work with pretty regularly. I will say, like, one of the things in the beginning, we viewed growth as hiring full-time employees. And while it is important for us to have, some people that are dedicated full-time employees, to Ashlan's point, there's a lot of power in having specialized contractors, because you may hire a marketing specialist, or you could hire an SEO who's really great at that one thing, but sometimes you need, somebody that's really good at conversion copywriting, or you might need somebody that's, you hire a designer. Their specialty might be web design, but you need somebody to do a print ad for a client, and that's just not where their expertise lies. So, kind of shifting our mindset and realizing like a good mix of full-time employees for kind of the work we're doing, but then also specialized contractors really helped us service clients better. So, we have our marketing team internally, we have account services internal, and then we have specialized contractors that we pull in on projects where it makes sense and where we need kind of specialized work.
And actually, I want to piggyback off of that again and kind of dive a little bit deeper into the contractor slash employee piece of it. So when you're hiring, you're looking for people to work with via 1099s or actual full-time. What are your criteria? How are you choosing these individuals and going about the process of actually bringing them into your agency? And then also, once you do have them in your agency, how do you know at what point you need more or you don't need more? If you, either one can go.
Because this was something too that we kind of figured out over time, and we have a formula where we look at revenue per full-time employee, and so we have a specific threshold of when we've got this level of adjusted gross income that justifies bringing in another person. And so we use a formula of, for hiring full-time employees, it's purely based on a revenue formula that we learned from a group called the Agency Management Institute, which is a peer group essentially for agency owners we got involved with probably 5 years ago and was a game changer for us. So on the full-time employee side, that's really how we manage that. It's purely based on a revenue number. And then on the contractor side, it's really project or client specific. We look at, what is the ask in front of us? Is this something we can do internally? Do we feel like we need specialized work? If we bring in a contractor, what is the project fee that, helps us maintain our margins on the project and stuff. So it really is either client project specific for that part, but on the full-time for the contractor, but on the employee side, it's purely based on a revenue formula. And what we've seen over the years too is that it's, we can tell when we hit a revenue threshold too. You can start to see that the internal team gets stretched and the bandwidth gets smaller. And it's like you start to see it and you're like, okay, yeah, we're there at that threshold. And on the hiring side too, especially for the internal employees, because we are a small team, all it takes is one person to throw off the whole vibe and the culture. And so we evaluate everybody on our shared company values. And these are values that Hami and I really established and said, these are the things that are important to us as owners. And when we're interviewing and hiring, we evaluate candidates not just on like the hard skills, like that part is table stakes, but it's like, do you exhibit these same values and have these same values, like resourcefulness, constant, being a constant learner. And we look at it through that lens. And if somebody doesn't meet those criteria, then they're probably not going to be a good fit and we're going to get frustrated. And so we really hire more for values versus, if you've got the hard skills or you might be lacking in some areas, those are things that we can train, but we can't change somebody's values. And I think this is one lesson too, is like you start a business, the business should serve your life. Your life shouldn't be there to serve your business. And so if it's important to you, you're the owner, you get to make those decisions. And so if these are your values, that means you get to hire the people that share your values. You don't have to compromise yours. So I think that's, that was something that we figured out along the way, is that hiring for values was more important than just hard skills.
Ashley?
So I made the mistake of hiring friends in the beginning, which I think we all do, because they saw that I was really, really busy and they're like, do you need help? I also need to get away from the job that I was at. So that is kind of why I've kind of leaned into the contractor direction a lot more. And what's nice is everybody who I subcontract with right now also has their own business. So we kind of have a reciprocal relationship that if they have a project or something that they need to bring me in on, or vice versa, we work really collaboratively that way. And so they are values aligned. We do kind of look for the skill sets. And honestly, they're kind of my first level of like, hey, this is a new thing that's coming in. Do you have the capacity to work on this? Can I put you, into the proposal? And then we plan and scope it out. Or I do things like text Stephen and be like, hey, I have this new project and I don't have anybody in my stable that knows how to do this. Who are some folks that that could be a good fit for this? And so I think, leveraging your network, and you feel like being a part of AMA. I mean, I always admittedly go to Stephen because he's always responsive to me, but I know that I can also hit up multiple other people that I've been in AMA with. So don't feel bad, Stephen, if you ever have to like not respond or don't have somebody. You're just usually like my first line of defense for that stuff. Yeah.
But I think to that point too, I think that's one of the really like powerful things too about not just AMA, but like networking, and especially, as a business owner, like I think there can be times where it feels really lonely because, I mean, sure, there are a lot of us out there, but there's not a handbook that says this is exactly how you have to do it. And so, when you're a marketing director or VP of marketing at a company, it's a lot of times it's easier because you've got a team that works with you and stuff. And like, it's very different owning the agency because the relationship you have with the team is very different than if you're their manager at a company. And so, I think having a network of people like other agency owners that you can talk to and say, like, hey, how are you dealing with this? And, these aren't marketing specific problems. These are business operations problems, which if you're a marketer turned agency owner, a lot of times is very different for you. Because, I was a marketer turned business owner, not serial entrepreneur. So, having a network of other owners who understand kind of the struggles and stuff, I think has been really important in succeeding in this.
Yeah. And I feel like everybody that I've met who is a fellow business owner always want to lend the hand to bring the other folks up because we get how difficult it is to make this decision to do it. Like, yeah, there's definitely been, I've had people ask, like, what would happen if you, like lost 50% of your revenue tomorrow? And I'm like, knock on all the wood, that's not going to happen. But I was like, well, I guess I'd go get a job job. Like, that's not out of the question, but I'd prefer to keep doing this way because you get a lot of the freedom to be able to kind of make your own way in it, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And I would say a lot of those folks who make it look very easy online and like they're a solo, they definitely have a whole team behind them that's helping them out with it, even though they're making it look like, you can buy their program and just make it good.
I was going to do the plug for the American Marketing Association, specifically the AMA Detroit chapter. All these wonderful connections and networking opportunities are available by joining our organization. So just put it out there. But I'm glad that you mentioned the Agency Management Institute because, a lot of times as people are trying to move into owning their own business, they might not necessarily have the background or the experience and the accounting and the hiring and all the other legalities that could go into that. So besides that one, is there any other resources that you think of that are applicable that will be helpful to those who may want to start on this journey?
I think AMI has been the biggest for us, and we've experimented with other things over the years like Vistage. And, I know here locally in Houston, there are things like the small business development workshops and programs like that that are great resources for getting started because, again, if you're a marketer thinking about starting an agency, the marketing part. That part's easy. You can do that work, but there's all the other things that you may not have touched before, like you mentioned, accounting, the legal stuff. Like before you have clients, you really need some kind of contract in place. And, there are templates and things online, but you really need to have an attorney look at these things to make sure that you're covered, you're doing everything right. So, there are those pieces that we don't touch as marketers before. So I would, before investing in things like Agency Management Institute and those kind of places, I would look at like what small business development workshops exist in your area. Sometimes there are like cohorts and learning groups locally that are put on by like community colleges and local universities that you can tap into for that. So those are some of the ones that I can think of that we've either touched or experienced over the years.
Yeah, and the Small Business Administration has a program called SCORE. I can't remember what it stands for, but you can get a mentor that will help you, a free mentor that will help you through different business decisions. They've got a lot of free resources online. And you can also sign up, like they have got webinars going all the time, which secretly I sign up for some of those because they're being put on by marketing agencies. And I'm like, what are these folks talking about online? So it's a lot of market research for me personally, but a lot of the community colleges also will have a small business development center, SBDC, your local sometimes local and municipal governments will have some dollars dedicated to, city resources. I would definitely check out, like if you're planning on having a brick and mortar, there's often like grants and programs that will help you, pay for some of those startup costs. It just kind of depends on where you are located. Like every once in a while I'll run into folks here in Las Vegas and Nevada and they'll be like, you don't want a physical office space? And I was like, no, I don't want a physical office space because I love working from home. But they're like, but there's this, bundle of money. And I was like, yeah, and then I could have an empty, like an office that just sits empty all the time because I don't want to drive over there. So, but there are a lot of really great opportunities to leverage typically in your area. So definitely look out for them.
So we talked a little bit about your agency and how you got to where you are. Like Stephen, you mentioned you finally found your niche and this is who you serve, and Ashley mentioned you serve nonprofits. Can you tell us whether how from the beginning of your agency, the services you were providing, what you offered, how has that evolved over time? Have you reduced some things, added some things, and then how did you kind of get to that point where you got your found your sweet spot?
Yeah. Ashlan, do you want to take this one first?
I'll go first. The sweet spot that I got to now is just helping people set up the foundational marketing systems they need to operate. So a really good website, email marketing, then they can, play around with social media and paid advertising being last. Oh, and I forgot your brand first, because that's kind of the most important thing, but helping people build in the correct order. So they're not, building while they're flying the plane sort of thing. But in the beginning, honestly, anything marketing related, I took. I did Etsy SEO. I did, what other random things did I do? I tried like all these different platforms. Um, you know, when Go High Level first came out, I was in like somebody's white label space and like they weren't even like I was trying to run email newsletters out of there. The unsubscribe button wasn't even coded. Like you had to literally custom code, like set up everything. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. We're going to use MailChimp. It all comes out of the box ready to use. But I think that is, you've got to kind of make that decision of like, what platforms are you really going to be in? And typically what I tell folks is like, I work with whatever, marketing technology suite you bring to me. But if it doesn't do what we want it to do and I can find you something more affordable, we're going to migrate into the right set of tools for you because, you shouldn't be trying to dink around with something that's not working and making you frustrated just because you're, already in that as well.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, a similar thing. Like when we first started, I would say that we were probably very like tactic heavy. It was a lot of SEO, online advertising, specifically like Google search and display, um, email marketing. And then, one of the things that, we quickly learned was that Hami and I, we had done that before and like we got more enjoyment out of like the deep strategy work. And I think we probably bundled strategy into our services almost where we were giving strategy away for free in the beginning. And so over the years, we've kind of separated that out to where like now we have probably what's more of a traditional consulting service, which is priced at a much higher price point, but then we still have the tactical things because, you know, strategy is where tactics go to die. That's where it falls apart if, people aren't really just wanting to pay for strategy because a lot of times they don't have the team or the resources to execute it. So, kind of the way we've shifted over the years is like, yes, we still do tactical work. We still do SEO, AI visibility, online advertising, but those are the things that our team is really owning. If Hami and I get involved with the day-to-day work at this point, a lot of times it's that deeper strategy work and the consulting type work. So that's really where we've shifted. And I think once we settled on that niche and really niche down, that's really made it easier too to go in and say, hey, we're going to start with a consulting project, or we're going to start with this type of thing, which usually leads into more of the retainer model work for like the service, and then we can hand it off to the team.
I'm glad you brought up AI because that is a very hot topic right now, right? Everybody's talking about AI. So, of course, we have to talk about that. So can you tell us a little bit about how has AI impacted your business currently? And what do you see the role of AI playing in your business in the future?
This is it's like such a loaded question. And, it feels like it changes every day. I think if I'd answered this question year and a half ago, I would have said that I think the future is agents and training people to manage agents is like the future of the agency world. I don't know that I necessarily think that's still the case. Um, I think a lot of times people look at AI as like, how can I be more efficient? How can I save time? And in my experience, I don't know that AI has truly saved us a lot of time. I think it's made us capable of doing things that we couldn't do a year, 2 years ago. Um, I'll give an example. The other day, we had a client or no, actually, it was our own instance of HubSpot where we wanted to move some forms into HubSpot, but it required like 50 custom fields, and there's not a bulk upload for that. You have to run a Python script. And I was like, we don't have a Python developer. I was able to get step-by-step instructions from Claude to do that work. And, yes, I was able to do in 15 to 20 minutes what would have taken hours, but it wasn't really about the time saving as much as it was about like being able to do something that we weren't able to do a year ago with the resources we had. And so, we're very transparent with clients that we use AI. Our clients are expecting us to use AI. Our clients are actually expecting us to teach them how to use AI better. And I think that's one of the things that have happened is where companies are looking to their marketing agencies almost as like the AI experts. And so, we're training clients on how they can use AI, what are some things they can be doing. And so one of the things we've done internally is we have a weekly AI briefing with our team where we just share what's something you've done this week that the rest of the team needs to know about, because maybe it's something that needs to be put into practice for the whole agency versus just one person doing it one off. Or is there a tool you saw this week that we need to explore? So we've really built that intentional time in to talk about AI every single week so that it's not just something everybody's doing in a vacuum.
Ashley, what about you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that a lot of people will not turn to a marketing person because they're like, well, I'll just have my conversation with ChatGPT about what to do. So I feel like most of what I'm telling folks is if you're leaning on ChatGPT for strategy, you're following the strategy of everybody else in your industry and you're not differentiated. So your only competition is on price. And if you're not priced the lowest, which you're also leaving money on the table if you're priced the lowest. I think the other big thing too is that a lot of people are using AI to create their flyers, and there is no brand differentiation. If I see those little marks on the side one more time on a flyer, or like the categories, all the little iconography that's on it. And so that's kind of the biggest battle is that like, well, why should I pay you when I just pay $20 a month for Chat GPT and it just fine? And then typically they come back around and they're like, okay, it's, I gave this a couple months and it's not working, um, oh, what was it? I had a client recently that said that they had somebody submit their ad for the magazine. It had the wrong address, it had the wrong phone number, it had the wrong website, and they were like, "Thank God we didn't just run this." Yeah, and it was definitely an AI generated flyer. So I think that's the problem I'm seeing a lot is that people are not double checking the work that is coming through. And I also tell people garbage in, garbage out. If you're not training it on what it needs to know about you and your business, then it's just going to spit out gobbledygook. And it does hallucinate sometimes. So, but I definitely use AI in my business a lot for helping with copy, task management, summaries of meetings. We were just chatting before we hopped online about, whether or not you can use AI to record your meetings and things like that, because you can capture a lot of takeaways and action items that way. So I would say that it's speeding up the time to do things, but also needs a lot of structure and management just to make sure that you're not just taking anything that pops out of there as, as what is. So review is necessary.
So this question is gonna take you down a trip down memory lane. So what was the biggest adjustment you faced during your first year as an agency owner?
I can answer this one really easily. I know, like, I still remember this part. It wasn't even the first year, it was the first month. And I think, I went from a full-time in-office job to, we said, let's hold off on getting an office until we have some more revenue coming in. And I remember the feeling probably about 3 weeks in, the first couple of weeks were really exciting. But even though we had, two clients and we had work that we were doing, I remember feeling like I didn't have a job. And, we weren't taking a salary at the time, and it had only been 3 weeks. But I remember like just this almost like crippling anxiety because I felt like I wasn't working. And then it just kept compounding. And, I was like, we've got to get an office sooner rather than later because I have to, like, I'm not someone who enjoys working from home. So it created a lot of anxiety. And I would say until we had a physical space that I could separate myself from my house, I didn't feel like I had a job. I didn't feel like I was working, even though we had clients and meetings and we were doing work. It really didn't feel real until we had a space to do it. And so I know that's not everybody needs that. Not everybody wants that. And that's not the same path for everybody. But I think for me, that was probably the biggest adjustment was just feeling like I wasn't working and it didn't feel real until I had a space to do it in.
For you, Ashlan.
Yeah, kind of riffing off that, I think the biggest thing is the time management aspect. So I've gone, back and forth between, like you can, if you want to, you can work a 12, 16-hour day. But then also you can have like a 2-hour work day. So I think that that's definitely been something, time management and project management have been some of the biggest pieces and elements of it. I've always enjoyed like my career path. I worked at an agency, then I went in-house at corporate, then I worked at an agency, then I worked at two nonprofits. So I've done the in-house and agency thing. I've always really enjoyed having lots of different things to work on. Like today, I might be building a website. Tomorrow, I might be writing a launch email series. The next day, I might be creating scripts for my clients to do, record their videos that I'm going to edit for them. I like having that, being able to like choose the work that I work on and having lots of different things that challenge my brain. But then there are days where I'm just like, I don't really want to do anything today. I just want to like sit and veg out or, like I've been working out a lot more. So like I have like a really structured day. So I think in the beginning, similar to what Stephen said, there was no structure. Like I had to create structure because I didn't have a time that I needed to log on. It was all, meeting driven. And I didn't have a time to log off because I could just keep working. And I think that that was another mindset to shift as well, is the work never ends. So you have to have your own boundaries of the work ending for you.
I think that's a good point. And like, I think this part is so individual too, because, a lot of people talk about you start a business, and I even said it earlier, like the business should serve your life, not your life serving your business. But like, I think too, it's important to know yourself, to know like what structure you need, because people will say, oh, you start a business that way you've got the flexibility to do all these things. And I know that I'm somebody that like I need that and I want the structure. I pretty much keep normal business hours, in terms of like working a Monday through Friday. I come in at 7:30 and leave at 4:30 most days. That's kind of my standard schedule. Doesn't mean I don't like have the flexibility to change that if I want. I certainly can. It just has never made sense. We've talked over the years about like, oh, we should really just not work on Fridays during the summer. we've just never done that because it just didn't feel, like
Mhm.
in theory, these things sound great, but then it's like, there's still work to do. And like, there's so many nights that I get on the computer at like 7 o'clock after I eat dinner and I sit there till 10 o'clock because there's things I can still be doing as a business owner and getting on the computer on the weekend. So it's not, even though I keep regular hours, it's not like I don't continue to work on the business other times. But I think that flexibility part, in theory, it sounds great, but I think a lot of business owners don't actually live or lean into that. We have it, but I think we probably, at least for myself, like I still keep a fairly normal business schedule.
Yeah. When I think having that self-awareness of how you work best is
Yeah.
is good as well. And there's always like technology and tools. Like I just sent my meeting scheduling link out to somebody and they're like, "Oh my God, we couldn't find anything on your calendar until, much, much later." And I'm like, "Oh, let me go look at the settings on that one." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I set that I could only have one mystery meeting a day. Let me up that. I can have up to four mystery meetings in that category a day." But yeah, keeping aligned to what works best for you. So like for the summer, I've been piloting having a meetings and connections week and then having a deep work and a focus week. And oh my gosh, I've been able to get so much more done because I'm not having meetings every day, 5 days a week. I had already actually turned off Mondays and Fridays as like meeting days that you can pick in my calendar. So everybody likes to network in person here in Las Vegas. So I'm like, okay, we'll find a Monday or a Friday that I can come to, come be around you. But yeah, so controlling your calendar and realizing that you get to set those limitations, not be dictated by other people or other folks' expectations, I think is really helpful too.
I think you both bring up good points. I mean, that's a challenge even in 9 to 5, right? Like work is over, got it, can't take it home, got to close the laptop, right? I've heard even different tactics of people like they close a laptop and put it somewhere physically away from them so they can't go back to it. Or if you have a home office, they close the door and put closed for business on it and then flip the sign back over when it's like actually the next work day, right? So you're right, it's an individual thing to figure out what works best for you to help with your time management. I just want to remind our participants to please feel free to drop any questions in the chat and we will definitely answer those as we go along. You don't have to wait to the end, that we will have time at the end also for answering questions. So again, going back down memory lane, looking back, what is one decision you made early that helped create a stronger foundation for your business? Ashley, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I will start. They're kind of related things. I didn't run my business on a Gmail email address. So, Ashlan at AshbeanPDX.com was the email address that I ran things on. And then I had a website domain up that literally just was sign up for my email newsletter so that I had that kind of domain history. But that way, at least I was collecting people's information as I was like out in the community networking and, sharing my business cards. People were signing up for the email list in the beginning. So I think having that professionalism and that credibility, I think a lot of people when they start out, they run on a Gmail address or something like that, and that's always like a flag for me, especially since we do get a lot of people who start an agency and they're out of business after a year. Clients kind of get a little wary of that because they're like, "Oh, you're going to help me and support me now. What if you're not there for me to go back to, in a year?" So taking it really serious and making that a part of your budget. I mean, I don't think it's that expensive. I think Google Workspace is like $6 a month to have, and then your domain is like $12 a year. So invest, I guess that is the roundabout way, is like invest in your business and take it seriously so it doesn't feel like you're just going to abandon it if things get difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things especially in this market, we see a lot of times is people will start a business out of, you know, they're in between time, between jobs or something, and like it's only there for 3 months. And I think that does lead to like hesitation with people hiring marketing sometimes because they're like, oh, and so, we made a very conscious decision, like I mentioned, like leaving a full-time job. Like this was a business. Like we were committing to giving a real go at running a business. And um, like Ashlan said, we did all the things. We had a website up. We had, a business email set up. Everything was set up. And I think one of the decisions we made too was like, this is our timeline. Like if by this point we can't bring in clients, we need to make some hard decisions. And we'd kind of built a 3-year plan from the beginning, and not everything goes to plan, but we were able to hit these targets we set and knew that like, okay, if we can do that, then we can continue to grow it. And I think just really committing to the work and committing to doing the things. And we even created kind of rules for each other of like, hey, we won't spend more than $100 without talking to the other person, because it's a 50-50 partnership. And so we kind of created those rules in the beginning that I think were really foundational. And, those are things that have evolved over the years. We've grown. So $100 isn't what it was year one, but, we kind of had that foundation of like, this is how we work together. And I think that's what helped it work, because we weren't just kind of playing it by ear.
I'm gonna take a pause on my questions. We actually did have a question come in our Q&A box. So how did you figure out which CRM, website domain, and email system was best for your business when you started? Any systems you would recommend?
So for us, I knew that we knew that we wanted to be on Google Workspace as far as like email, like for our work email and stuff, because we liked Google Drive better than Microsoft, and that was really a personal preference. I would say if you're working with, a lot of, you're planning to work with big corporate clients, like you're probably better off going the Microsoft route. It's something that comes up for us later. Like now we pay for Microsoft and Google because so many of our clients force us to use Teams and SharePoint. But the domain, once we had our brand, like our company name, then it was like, all right, is the domain available? It wasn't. So we had to like pick something close to it. Like our agency is called One Foot Over, and the .com wasn't available, and we really wanted a .com. And so we had to go with Get One Foot Over. So kind of just settling on that. And then we knew in the beginning, like before we had revenue, MailChimp was the most affordable, and we wanted to do some email marketing. So we signed up for MailChimp. We both knew from experience that we wanted to use HubSpot, but we needed to wait until we had a little bit more revenue. So we started with the free version of HubSpot CRM and eventually grew into like a bigger tier, like using Marketing and Sales Professional. But some of these were really just personal choice based on tools we'd used before, and then like what made sense financially at the time. So, I definitely recommend using a free version of HubSpot for a CRM. MailChimp is still a really good choice for email. We moved ours to HubSpot once we grew into it, but those are some of the ones that we started with, and I think they're still valid tools.
Yeah, I've tried every tool under the sun, usually by learning from somebody else what they're using and being like, okay, I'm going to integrate that into it. But honestly, your CRM can be as simple as spreadsheets, like in the beginning, because that can always get uploaded into anything. So like at the time that I started my business, MailChimp was free at the time. So I started with that. And then uh, I eventually switched to Flowdesk for a hot second because they were all the rage because you could have an unlimited number of contacts for one base price. And then now I use Kit and Go High Level as my CRM and my email marketing system. When it came to the same thing with Google Workspace, it was just so much easier to navigate, moving from using a personal Gmail into Workspace, and so that is what I did. But usually, you're picking between Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace as well. And I feel like Google Workspace now, if you have multiple emails under your same domain, I love that they do the shared storage system. so that your whole team has access to all of that storage. I think I have like 8 terabytes now, which is just insane. I'm never gonna, well, I shouldn't say never. We might use all that space at some point. Um, and then what else have I used? Obviously I've used a lot of different like social media scheduling tools. I love Metricool, and as well as like Loomly. And so it's similar to what Stephen said. I would say try the free versions of things and then don't be afraid to migrate into other stuff as you grow, because most things you can export all your data and just pull it into something else as well.
Yeah, we've been through 3 project management systems, and finally, probably about 5 years ago, moved to ClickUp, and it's been the constant, and like I don't ever see us moving off of it. And I don't want to say never, but like ClickUp is also, there's a free version, and there's ways to structure ClickUp too, where it can act as your CRM. We've actually built ClickUp where we manage client projects through there, but I also have like a separate board set up that's our applicant tracking system. So when we do hire, they fill out a ClickUp form as the application, it drops them into ClickUp. We move them across like essentially a custom built applicant tracking system in there. So you could do the same thing with a CRM, like as a CRM.
Mhm.
And I will also vouch for ClickUp because I think me and Steven are both power users. So it
I
is a
use
very good project manager tool. Ashley, do you use ClickUp?
I use ClickUp too.
Awesome.
I flirted with Notion for a little while and then it wasn't doing it for me. So I went back to ClickUp. But yeah, but I will like, you know, I would say Stephen had said this earlier, be committed to learning, because I think in marketing and digital, we are always going to have new tools. Uh, that is also another thing that you have to set time aside to do is, well, either hire somebody who knows how to use the thing that you're moving into. So I have somebody who is a fractional COO who helped me set up a lot of, took a look at like my operations suite and systems and helped me just optimize it to be better. And so I think, either creating time and space for you to do it yourself or hiring experts in those spaces so that you can actually move faster is helpful.
We also have another question from our participant. So, how do I know how to charge hourly versus project cost? And how do I determine what I should be charging? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, at what point would I want to create a business entity for myself if I'm currently doing small, short-term projects? So, Ashley, you want to start and then we'll go to Stephen?
Yeah, I historically undercharged when I first started out, because remember that you're not only paying yourself, you're paying your business. So, I took the hourly rate that I was working, making at my day job, and I was like, okay, that's enough. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I have all these software systems, and your business license and business insurance and all those things. So I actually like to look at the marketplace and see what people are paying. Like some agencies out there do have their pricing on their websites, and I feel like especially women, we frequently undercharge when we first get started out. That would also be a good place to just go interview other people in your space and be like, what are you charging? What's the market rate for this stuff? And then I also do, sometimes I do sliding scale pricing. So I'll see what, I don't want to not have somebody be able to work with me. So, organizations that have bigger budgets, I'll be like, okay, you could hire somebody full time. So you're going to pay at this rate. Somebody who maybe is starting out will have smaller package pricing as well. And then so I got freaked out by this early on, and I did form an LLC for my business. But basically, if you were to get sued as an individual, they could come after your personal assets. So that is the reason to make a business entity, is because your business will get sued. You will not be personally sued. So people could only come after the business assets. But when I first started my business in Oregon, I think an LLC was like $100. So that was an easy investment. We pay about $350 a year here in Las Vegas, which is not bad because we have, you can put up to 5 entities under a single LLC here, which is kind of nice as well.
Yeah, I would, similar to Ashland, I think that what to charge is that's a hard thing to figure out because, if you're just trying to do it like as freelance work and stuff, like there's only so much that the market will, respond to. And so, it would be great to be like, I'm so experienced, I want to charge, you know, $50,000 for a one-page website, but if the market will only support, $5,000, like it's going to be a hard sale. Um, so I would say a lot of it, like Ashlyn said, looking at what other people are charging, looking at, even places like Upwork, where you can see what freelancers are charging for projects and stuff, is a really good place to kind of see what you're competing against, especially for like solopreneur or freelance work. Um, I think, figuring out to like the kind of the standard agency, like marketing agency hourly rate right now is like around the country is $175 an hour. And that's for an agency. I will say a lot of the contractors that we work with, the range is probably somewhere between $50 to $100 an hour for contractors based on their, and, slides based on their experience, and their specialization. Um, so I think really just kind of figuring out what your clients are willing to pay. And then if you're willing to do that for, if they tell you like, I only have $15 an hour, you may not be willing to do that and you shouldn't compromise if that's what they're asking. But, I agree with Ashlyn on create a business entity because that protects your personal assets. And then I saw that you had a question kind of above that too, like how do you know if your skills are strong enough or if it's imposter syndrome? I, only you can answer that question if you feel like you've got the experience to do the work. I think it's easy a lot of times to feel like, maybe I'm not qualified because I've not done this specific thing before, but we're all capable of doing things that we've never done before. And it's just, are you willing to put in the work to do that? I think you would know if you went into a project and, even 10 years into it, we've been approached for projects and we're like, we don't have the expertise to do that. Like that is way outside of our wheelhouse. And just having that self-awareness to say, no, I don't want to put myself in a position to let the client down and then also damage my reputation. But imposter syndrome is real. And so don't let that get in the way of you taking projects that you are qualified to do.
Thank you for pointing that out. That part, I didn't see the first part, but I do want to circle back too in their question at the bottom half where it said, at what point would I want to create a business entity for myself? Are you recommending right at the get-go, go ahead and file an LLC and not be a solo, preneur that you could technically do tomorrow and just start doing business? Go ahead and get that LLC filed away. Now, when you did that, did you do that on your own or did you have some help with that?
We did that part on our own. Like just kind of read some online resources, like what we needed to do. And, kind of you could start doing work and start, taking some money. Like it's not going to be a huge deal and set up your LLC while you're doing that, but like quickly get it transferred over. But I would do that part sooner rather than later. And just have, technically, and not to get too in the weeds, you don't even have to have a separate bank account for it, but these are all best practices just to keep it separate. But I would do the LLC, just get your business set up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I just did it online by myself, just
Yeah.
reading the instructions that the state actually put up there. So
Yeah, it does vary state by state. So it's
yeah.
some places you got to fill out two forms with Secretary of State and your local entity. So just understanding what you need to do there.
Yeah. And there's sometimes very different licensing. Like I have to pay for a license to be a home-based business here. That's a $50. So yeah, so it's 300 with the state and then $50 because I work from home. But that $50 a year is much less than it would cost me to rent an office someplace. So I'll take it.
So the next question we got, which actually kind of is a nice flow into what we call sales and business development, because that is part of owning your agency. You've got to get the business, right? So the question is, what are your biggest challenges in gaining new clients what are practical things you're doing to reach new clients today?
Uh, I can talk about that first. So I have joined many business networking groups, virtual and in person. So I think always be out there sharing what you do. I'm part of a BNI group here locally in Las Vegas that is all referral marketing based. So we meet once a week. We pass referrals between the businesses in there, and then it is my job to train each of the 50 other people in that group what makes a good referral and what makes bad referrals, and who I work best with. But when I first started out my business, I basically told everybody that, like, hey, I have a business now. So, all that marketing stuff I was doing in-house, I now, provide for small business, small, medium-sized businesses and nonprofit organizations. I'm happy to chat with anybody. And so I just became, the go-to person for my network to have those conversations with. I also have intentionally networked with other agency owners that maybe don't do the full range of what I do. So, sometimes you'll get an agency that's very social media focused and they don't touch email, or they're very web development focused and they don't do SEO. And so, those can be really good collaborative partnerships, or very good, they finish their website build and then they bring you in to do the SEO for it. But yeah, I would say always be networking. The times where I have not networked is where I've watched my pipeline of potential clients dry up. And I think one of the biggest challenges is I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this lately, Stephen, is that you might have a conversation with somebody today. They might not make the decision to hire you 1 to 2 to 3 months down the line. So you do have to kind of keep in touch with them, make sure that they're getting all the information they need to make the decision to hire you or work with you.
Yeah, it's we see that, and I think for us, like we used to approach sales as, we're like, well, we're not salesy. We don't want to be salesy because we want it to be a relationship. It's consultative, and like the two things can be true. We have very much shifted our mindset, and because sales is a real discipline, and to grow you have to have sales. And we do a lot of networking. We go to a lot of events. We go to events that are not, it's one thing to go to AMA, but then you're in a room with all other marketers and they're not always the ones hiring us. So, we go to things like the Port of Houston Council, because those are the types of businesses that would hire us. And sometimes we're the only marketer in the room. And there's a lot of value in that as an agency owner, being the only, if they only know one agency, you're the one they're going to call. So we've kind of shifted that focus and then really made a concerted effort about a year and a half ago to lean into marketing the agency. It always kind of took a back seat. It's that, familiar, like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. It's the last client you take care of. And so, we started a podcast. Really, and we enjoy doing the podcast, but the biggest value in that is the clips on LinkedIn, because it creates so much visibility for the agency and for us. We've done an ABM campaign that resulted in clients. We do cold outreach, which I thought we would never do because we weren't salesy, but all of the standard sales tactics that salespeople do, Hami and I realized we've got to start doing these things if we want to have more of a sales and marketing engine versus just relying on referrals and word of mouth, which is how we grew the agency. And it's still really powerful, because I can tell you the easiest deals to close are the word of mouth deals, because they've already got some built-in trust because they were referred by somebody that trusted you already. But it's not the most scalable approach.
I was actually glad you touched on that, because one of our questions from our audience is actually, how do you find clients? Word of mouth, or do you actively search for them? What would you recommend for someone who wants to do this and is just starting?
I think in the beginning, it's a lot of it is going to be referral, word of mouth, like Ashlan said, like relying on like your friends and your network of people, letting them know, hey, I'm doing this now. I mean, we really just relied on our network in the beginning. We said, hey, we're starting an agency. This is the kind of work we're doing. We've been involved with AMA so long, like our AMA friends hired us for things. But that is, that's a great way to get started. And that's the lowest lift, because in the beginning, you're going to be the salesperson, the marketer, the business manager. You're going to be doing everything yourself. And so that's the easiest way to get started. But as you think about, like, if you're doing it because you want to grow something, then you've got to think about how you can create a sales engine, who's going to be responsible for that, and then start looking at who are the clients that I want, how can I reach them, and start doing those kind of things. But I think in the beginning, that referral and word of mouth is the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah. And I think those market research conversations are really critical. Like I said, that's how I got my first like flagship client off of one of those. But I think I did like 10, just virtual coffee chats. And that really helped me dial in my messaging about what I do and also what people in the market were looking for. So I don't just like, obviously, I did that when I first started my business, but anytime that there's like a major shift in the market too, I go back and I ask people like, what are you looking for? What's happening? How much money are people spending? Looking at data, like I actually have this on my desk. Nevada State Bank did a small business survey. So, I look at what people are saying about the market and paying really close attention to that because it will help you close those sales better if you know kind of like the mindset and the space that folks are in. I think another important thing too is as you are kind of tapping and reaching out to your network, help them know how to make a good referral for you. So like I often give folks like, here's like a little blurb that you can use to introduce me by email. Like Hami did a great job the other day. I'm helping out somebody with a website thing because I had responded to something she put on LinkedIn. And that is also a good thing too, is like I actually get a lot of clients either from speaking actually in front of people in public and also responding to things that people are putting out on the internet as well. So it just takes being active and having that kind of, you know, what happens during your sales call? What are you sending them after your sales call? Having like leave behind materials can be really helpful. I've got, 3 different like one pagers that I have printed that I bring to places as well as have available digitally. And so, yeah, just I would think, take anything that you've been using to market the businesses and the work that you've been doing and make it for yourself. It's always helpful to have.
We're coming up on the close of the webinar, so we're going to do a lightning round answer for this question. Stephen, you're familiar with lightning round, so 60 seconds or less. So last question is, what helped you build credibility before your agency had an extensive portfolio or long client list?
I think probably the biggest thing was relying on just the experience that I had and the work I had done previously and my experience in previous jobs. I don't want to discourage somebody, but if you have no previous marketing experience, it's going to be hard to build credibility as an agency, because somebody's going to ask, why should I hire you if it seems you've never done marketing work? So, Hami and I both relied on our past experience because we didn't have proof, like agency proof. We were just bringing in clients from the beginning. And so they trusted our past experience. And then we use that to leverage building case studies for the agency.
Sort of the same for me. I actually had people that I had selected that I had worked with in the past and just said like, hey, I'm starting this. Will you be the phone call reference person? And so one of them was actually somebody I volunteered with at AMA. I kind of chose different people throughout my career path. Some of them were people that I had, worked with 2 jobs ago as well. It helped because I had past agency, like I had worked within agencies. And so I did tap some of those folks that I had worked with previously to be those reference phone calls. And then I kind of looked through all of my different performance evaluations at all my different jobs. And, because you always like write about like the cool project that you did in there. I pulled all of those as examples, normal things that I put in my resume and be like, this is how I could help you as well. So.
All right, last lightning round question, very last, 60 seconds. Here we go from one of our participants. How have you landed big businesses, big corporation clients yet? If so, how does landing those clients differ from landing small businesses and nonprofit clients? And then how do you get the attention of a larger business?
I'm just going to
Um,
do this really quickly and say I don't want to work with corporates. So I will pull myself out of this answer. I like working with the smaller folks and nonprofits. But go ahead, Stephen.
yeah. So yes, we have landed kind of multinational accounts, and I I will say sometimes it's almost easier than the smaller clients because the risk for them in hiring us is so much smaller. And we were hired on a project for a very large client because we had a relationship with someone that already worked there, where we had done a really small project, and we pitched against Ogilvy, and we were like, there's zero chance we're going to win this project. We're pitching against like one of the giants, and we won that project. And it was kind of a, a surreal moment to know that we pitched against one of like the most well-known agencies in the world and still won this. Um, I think some of it just comes down to confidence too. Like we felt comfortable going in. We knew that the pitch was strong, and we got the work. But it was all based. We had a relationship with somebody that was already there and helped us get our foot in the door.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ashlan and Stephen, for being here. I know I learned a lot. I hope our attendees also learned a lot. Everyone, please make sure to visit amadetroit.org and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook to keep up to date on our next events, whether in person or virtual. And with that said, we are only 2 minutes over, so let's go ahead and close this out. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We hope you learned a lot, and we will see you at our next event. Have a good day, everybody.
So, thanks.